email? Have they all, did they fail on that task? Colleagues online, have you met any friends online? Have you had an email or a Teams exchange? Anyone? Not yet. Wendy? Oh, well, I need to, yes, certainly. Oh, Kate and Sarah had a chat in the break. Brilliant. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, fantastic. So the people online, if we can do it online, those of you in the room, after the next break, I will be asking you, and I'll be hoping to see more hands. They're laughing at the back. What's funny? They're up to no good. They're in the naughty seat, the people. Okay, let's come back and what are we talking about? Let me get my script. I'm doing some real multitasking today, so I have to look calm and collected with this. I can't be prancing around the stage. Okay, we're going to have a bit of a debate. We do, woo, yes, we do love a debate, we do. And I'm hoping a Mentimeter will go up at some point. And those of you who've been looking at your emails, this is the opportunity to leave those emails and scan the code when it comes up. But what are we talking about? It's a simple debate. Is HR driving or blocking change? You cannot sit on the fence. You have to respond. And don't worry, it's anonymous. We won't tell your CPO, your chief exec. Don't worry, you're safe. But it's deliberately, well, it's a deliberately provocative narrative. Rather than a debate with winners and losers, we'll just explore nuances. And we're all friends, okay? Don't make this a competition. But we just want to explore when we block, what happens? When we drive, what happens? And what can we do differently? So we're going to try and do this together. You can have your thoughts and reflections when the Mentimeter polls come up, but I've got a power-packed panel. Yeah, what is wrong with, come on, a power-packed panel. Listen, they got me here. The brief was just to make them whoop and laugh and stomp their feet, so come on. Okay, and so with me, I've got Peter Cheese, not David Cheese. Oh, were you? Oh, did you hear the joke?
No, well, I it was a good comment or a bad comment, but it was also just a misnaming.
That was the first bit of it, but I'm not going to go into the rest. So Peter Cheese, Chief Executive of CIPD, give him a round of applause. I have got Elizabeth Inyawade, Chief People Officer of SASH. I've got Leatham Green, Transformation Director at Oracle. We love our private sector colleagues. And Sarah Morgan, Chief People Officer, NCL ICB. And oh gosh, yes, and NWL. Yes, there was a merger. So yeah, not yet. Oh, well, what are we? Okay, oh, you're at both? I thought we merged. Okay, let's change the conversation to what we're supposed to be talking about. Okay, so what are we saying on the poll? Okay, I'm gonna stand up. Try not to break anything. I can't do a 360 with my neck. Okay, so where are we? Oh, what's wrong? Both, okay. Some people want to sit on the fence. 11 say driving, 16 say blocking, 33 say both. I'm sure there are more of us online and in the room. Who hasn't voted? Can you please vote? Can you please vote if you haven't voted? But okay, so it's going to be an interesting debate. But blocking, most of you are saying that we're being a bit of a blocker. But let's dive into the conversation. Bear with me, with our analog digital tech. Okay, so I've got a question for you, Peter. I've called out the poll. What are your thoughts on that poll? And from a CIPD perspective, most people, 16 people, well, 17 now say we're blocking. Big chunk of the people, though, say we're doing both. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Bernard. Great to be here. wonderful establishment born at St. Thomas's. So it's lovely to be here. First of all, it's a sort of perhaps a honest reflection, maybe more honest than I expected. I mean, we know where some of these questions are coming from. There's been quite a lot of media stuff recently, having a bit of a pop at the profession. I sometimes say we're a bit of a soft target. It's always easy to find somebody who's been disgruntled because we let them go or something like that. I think in response to this poll, as I said, my first reaction is a sort of degree of honesty, which is not a bad thing, because it's very easy to look at criticism and say, well, they're all wrong and we add value and what's your problem? So it allows us, I think, to dig into what might be some of the reasons as to why we're seen as blockers. And the truth is, as a profession, we have to look at people from an organization from at least 3 different lenses. One is risk, because we do have an obligation and a responsibility as a profession to protect organizations from the bad hires or the bad behaviors, things like that. We clearly need to understand people from a cost perspective, and that often is the major driver. We were talking on the previous panel about cost pressures and things like that, so that becomes a very big focus. But the thing that we probably find more challenging is to talk about and understand people as value, and then link to that thought, what are the interventions that help us to drive greater value and greater outcome? And I was pleased to hear also on the previous panel with Michael and Janine talking about understanding the outcomes such as patient outcomes and our connection to that, not just doing stuff for the sake of doing it. So as I said, my first reaction, Bernadette, is I think that opens up the opportunity for an honest conversation versus one which is just saying, well, we've heard the criticism, it's all wrong, we're all perfect, let's just move on. And I'm sure we'll come back to some of those thoughts during the course of the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. To you, Elizabeth, CPO. What are your reflections on what we see from our poll?
Well, I sit in the camp where I found the time is now for HR driving change across the NHS and across other organizations as well. There is no time like now that we've ever seen before where we need particularly organizational development initiatives to support all the changes and everything that's happening across the NHS. The leaders need it. Organizations need it. It's absolutely critical to everything we are doing at the moment. So I belong in that camp very firmly of driving change forward. However, I'm also very conscious of some of those things that create that perception that HR is blocking change. And I'll just touch on a few of those and also touch on what could we do differently. From my perspectives and from my experience, working at pace. We absolutely need to be seen to be working at pace. Traditionally, HR have been known to sort of put you on the back burner a little bit in terms of, we'll come back to you when we are ready, or I'll see you tomorrow, it's 4:30, I'm going home. We absolutely need to embrace the business, keep them close, deliver at pace, because everything is moving at such a pace, such that a decision made at 10 o'clock might be changing at 3 o'clock. We need to adjust. We absolutely need to work at pace. The other thing is we need to be agile in our processes, policies, that ability to adapt because the world is adapting and changing really quickly. So there's no greater time like now to lean into our legal partners to understand what are some of those contractual changes we need to make now to help us deliver the neighborhood health work, to help us deliver the integrated healthcare organizations that are coming up, that constantly scanning the horizon and being ready so that when their business says, look, we are now moving into this, we are ready. It's not the time to go and look and say, do we have a mobility clause in our contract? We should have addressed that by now. So that kind of agility, adaptability, when we are not found to be that agile and adaptable, sometimes it creates the perception that we are blocking change. And then aligning to the organization's strategic objectives. Gone are the days of just saying, oh, our vacancy rate is now 10%. How does that relate to the organization's strategic objectives? How is it driving it? Perhaps stopping it? That additional adding value and driving the organization into a different place is what is needed from us. So from my point of view, we are needed. Our services, the people services collectively, absolutely is what is going to enable the NHS to change. They can't do without us. They need us. But how are we presenting? How are we getting on top of the curve? Scanning the horizon, being ready with people solutions. I've been doing a lot of working with colleagues, and there's a point to this, in the private sector. Most of my evenings now are spent here in London, either visiting an organization that's a private sector organization, just for my own development, but also to just find out what they're doing differently. Many of those organizations have ditched the HR business partnering name. They call their people solutions. So by the time you land in that division, in that business area, they're expecting you to arrive with solutions. Not the policeman who is going to say, you can't do that. Oh, this policy says no. Gone are those days, guys. It's about, how do you help me make this happen? Because this has got to happen. So that's the change we need to make to stop being perceived as blockers. But my goodness me, our time is now to drive the business forward, is my view. Thank you.
Elizabeth, for your reflection. So coming to you, Sarah, I suppose at system level across multiple organizations, how can HR help? How can we be that driver to help integration and transformation that we've been talking about today?
So I think we've really thought differently about what the people profession is at system level. It's quite a different of work, and the example that I'd give that's been really exciting, I think, has been the work and health agenda. So we've been thinking more about not even patients, but our residents and our citizens. And across the two ICBs that we work in, it's 48% of Greater London's population, 4.5 million people. I mean, I'm sitting here sweating, let's be honest. But I think we have a real opportunity, particularly thinking about what is our role as anchor employers, what is our role working with our partners on this agenda. And this was kind of my big bet. And some of my team are in the room here and they will say, yeah, she's always on about a big bet. But economic inactivity was a big bet for me on the people profession role, because to be honest, some of the conversations, and I've got some of my lovely NCL CPOs in the room as well, but there was a bit of a what's the point in you chat when I first got my job. Let's be honest, Gemma's nodding, all right, Gem. But there was something about that, I think, because, you know, we were this added layer, just were a bit like, oh, I don't really know what to do with you. And then we really needed to invent ourselves in a way that was meaningful, added value. And actually, I think it goes beyond in terms of what the traditional role is. I mean, that says to me, we think we get on our own way as the profession. I describe us as an inconvenient truth. And I think that is really, and Michael was talking about his CFO earlier, we are definitely an inconvenient truth to finance. Oh, yes. But I think there's something about how do we become kind of a real enabler. And we don't have, in NCL, we don't have the business partnering model, and we haven't, because for me, it was all about how do you get a really high quality professional consistency. So when we did our first redesign, 30% reduction, we actually invested in HR and OD and system, because the view was we are a people business. And we have a population of people as well. This isn't just about our organisation, and therefore we need to professionalise this. We are a profession, and I think sometimes we're just seen as paying rations, or we're getting in the way, or, you know, can you just sort that out? That's got messed up. Can you go and sort them out? I mean, I was the director of OD here for 7 years, and it's always kind of those people are fighting. Can OD just go and sort that out? So I think there is definitely a reinvention. We are, as a profession, we are getting behind the curve, I would suggest, on what modern workplace needs to look like. So we might need to follow you on your visits around London, Elizabeth. But I did a round table with lots of different sectors 2 weeks ago, and all sectors are struggling with what is the right thing now for the modern workplace, and how are we getting ready for our future generation? So the highest number of people falling out of work at 18 to 24-year-olds who are not in education, training or employment because of mental health and anxiety. 30% of university undergraduates have got neurodiversity. How ready for that workforce are we? I don't think we are. If we're honest, we're not there. So I think there's loads that we can do, but you're right, we need to be agile. We need to be really reinventing what it means to be a people professional, but there's loads of opportunity for us to make a massive difference, not just to our organisations, but to our population as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those nuggets. To the clapping. Getting nuggets free of charge. Let me move over to Lethem. And Lethem, you are immersed in digital transformation. And so how do you see HR enabling or slowing down that transformation? You know, how can we change our mindset, or even looking at the mic you're holding, our tools?
And great to be with you all this afternoon, and hello to those of you online. Just a little bit of background in terms of the context of where I'm coming from. So although I work for a tech company, my career has been in the public sector as an operational director. So I'm kind of a user of technology rather than a kind of a technical expert in terms of its functionality. And what I realized certainly 5 years ago as an HROD change professional is that I didn't know enough about how technology can help liberate the future of the workplace. So hence the opportunity came to join Oracle, and it's been a great learning experience on many levels. Yeah. And one of the key things for me is that when I go around the country, and I spend most of my time in the NHS and local government, a bit in higher education, is that it's not necessarily that you're risk averse or we're risk averse to technological change, digital innovation, but it's about confidence. And we heard some of that this morning from Tom. So we're confidence averse. And this is something that we're going to have to get our heads around and create time and space to enable us to be more understanding of where this can take us. It doesn't mean to say you've got to understand how, you know, the television works. You switch it on and you use, but you know how you can navigate your way around it. And what we don't do in this space currently is drive this change. Technological, digital innovation and change is all about people. And this is our time. This is where you should be front and center of all of these debates and discussions in the workplace. And currently, mostly, you're not. Yeah, it's been driven by IT, driven by finance, driven by perhaps a change expert from outside. But I don't see the HR chief people officer taking responsibility as the senior responsible officer for this change. And that's a big gap for us. So the question is, why? Is it because you don't want to, you don't feel confident enough to, or you're not capable enough in terms of your capability? So we look at something like, I don't know, CIPD's own research, but the McKinsey research, which was done recently, where it demonstrated when HR are front and center of digital transformation, they're 1.5 times more likely to drive innovation at pace across the business. And yet, only 40% of those chief people officers who answered this research felt confident enough to be there. It was less than 40%. So that kind of tells us something, isn't it? And when we look at kind of, are we a blocker or driver to this stuff, you know, we can be the fuel and the friction that sits there. And often we can kind of be caught in the middle of this space. And it's not because technology isn't there to kind of liberate the organizations you work in, because technology is there. It's usually to do with the fact that we don't know enough about it and how we're going to do it. And it's our mindset. So it goes back to this confidence issue. So what should we be doing? And much of it is about behavior and what leaders are thinking. Because if we're not investing in technology for you, and that's often a mantra that I will hear, you know the kind of tools that are out there which will help liberate your organizations, but you're not investing in it. I certainly see some very lazy procurement that takes place across public sector. We just procure for what we've got. We don't spend enough time commissioning what we want and have that really clear articulation of our compelling vision of the future and how technology will drive it. And that's what we should be commissioning, not a new payroll system or a new recruitment system. What is the employee experience, the resident experience, the patient experience? How does the employee fit in with that? And work backwards from there. And very rarely will you see that, if ever, as a procurement kind of starting point, the strategy for your procurement. So we need to design digital solutions in your terms with the clinicians and with the employees, and not do it to them. So, we refer to transactional stuff. The people who do this transactional work at the moment will probably know a better way of doing it if we actually spend time talking to them. And know if you actually did this, this, and this would happen. And then how do we work with that element of the workforce to actually transition them into a safer space? Because you can't just wipe all of this out all of a sudden when we've kind of been totally reliant upon it. And people sit within this space, don't they? They're human beings with feelings who have been really important to us for a period of time. And then moving from roles to skills. And this is what happened during COVID, isn't it? We had skilled people who would just do stuff and make stuff happen. And since COVID, we've retreated back into kind of this role-based solution, hierarchical. And that's not a great thing, because we need to give people freedom to grow and innovate across the organization. And then having HR as the ethical voice of human-centered transformation, that's really important to me. Because if we're not there being the front and center of the debate, it will be driven through a different lens, and it will provide a different solution to the employees and to your patients, I would argue. Well, that's what I see, yeah? And the NHS as an organization is the intersection between humanity and technology. And that's where I actually see HR and OD as being in terms of the business. And that clarity of purpose, which we heard referred to by Janine as well, that is so fundamental. And it's this intersection that we can really drive with passion and power across the organization. So the question isn't whether or not digital transformation is going to happen for you, because it is going to happen. For me, it's a question of whether or not you're prepared to kind of step into that space with confidence, with purpose, and with clarity, and really make it a place where people are respected as an HR profession. And that's when people will listen to your voice.
All right, so clap, stepping in with confidence, with clarity. And you just, yeah, you've changed my script, and I'm going to come back to you, Peter. But before Peter, I asked Peter the question, can we have the second poll up so colleagues can begin to answer that? But Peter, I'm coming to you. And before everyone was talking about the future of work, you were talking about the future of work. And it seems like we're still talking about the future of work when we're in the future of work. So my question to you is, you have the unique perspective of meeting different HR professionals across different organizations and across the globe as well. And so from your perspective, what are the top 3 things that you think HR teams need to do now in order to, we're talking about digital transformation, in order to make sure we are there ready front and center when the organization, when our NHS is ready to pivot? And we know at the NHS, we're a bit behind the curve with some of this stuff, but what do you see out there? What is best practice?
I think it's been expressed that this is an incredibly important time for our profession. Indeed, over the years, people have played buzzword bingo with me, waiting for me to say there's never been a more important time to be in HR. And I've been saying it for the last 10 years, but I think, as we've already heard, this is a very fundamental inflection point that we're at. It is driven an awful lot by digital and technology, and I spend a lot of time in that world as well. I engage a lot with technologists and AI gurus and all the rest of them. What is encouraging is they are increasingly saying that we need HR in the room as well, right? So they've recognized that you can't make transformation happen or ensure that you're using these incredible technologies ethically and responsibly, or understand the skills and capabilities that people are going to have, and how you make sure you're not leaving people behind in this future world of work. They know that they're going to need our profession in the room, and these are critical agenda items for us to respond to as a profession. I think, as has already been expressed also, we've got to invest a little bit more in ourselves. Again, people have played buzzword bingo with me on this one. I've said for a long time that we're like the cobbler's children. So we worry a lot about everybody else's skills and capabilities, but we haven't done enough for ourselves. And this is a time where we do need to step up. I think that's good to, that's going back to the reflections you first made on that first poll, are we a blocker? Well, I think it was already heard. One of the reasons we might be a blocker is because we are not always in the right space. We're not in the rooms that we need to be into. We're not in the conversations that we need to, because perhaps we don't have the confidence or capability, and to some degree credibility that comes with people knowing we've invested in ourselves. And I am immensely proud of the relationship that we have with the CIPD across the NHS and to help them to professionalize the profession, because I think it is absolutely critical that others see that we are credible and that we are capable and that we are confident. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the things, coming back to this point about blocking, the things where technology projects and transformation projects fail is they fail because we don't understand the people and we don't understand the cultural dynamics. I mean, how many times has that age-old expression being used as culture can eat strategy for breakfast? Now, culture is our space. It's our domain space to understand some of these things. We know that so many technology projects fail because we have not understood enough of the people dynamics, how they need to be brought along on the journey, how they need to be communicated with. This is our stuff. This is our stuff. So we've talked about for quite a long time of talking about being experts in people and change, because the fundamental aspects of change are about, as Lethem said, are about people and culture. So this is a really, really fundamental point in time. I engage, as I said, a lot with the AI space, and this is something we've got to lean into, not just from the perspective. There are two perspectives to this. One is how we use AI within our own profession. So as we've all again said, part of the blocker may be because we're not agile enough. We take too long to do things and we make things too complicated. Well, if we really use AI effectively, we can make ourselves more agile, but that won't come for free. We've got to engage and understand our our own processes and capabilities in that. But the second critical thing is the thing that we've all been talking about already, which is our engagement with the organization. And I'm slightly challenging the word drive change too. I think there are some aspects of change that we should drive, and cultural change would be a good example. But an awful lot of change, which is arguably going to be led by organizational restructuring or by the investments in technology, we need to enable. And we need to see that we have an absolutely fundamental role in enabling change. But in order for that to happen, we've got to be honest about the things that are perhaps blocking us. So that's how I think I'd respond to that, Bernadette.
That's a crap. Okay, right, let's see what you've been up to. What's the one thing HR must do differently to be seen as a driver or enabler, using the word Peter used just now, for change? So be vocal, okay? Panel, take notes because I'm coming to you on some of these points. Oh gosh, it's moving. Be vocal, be confident, be brave, lead change, be in the room. Oh gosh, who's doing this to me? Speak up. So the biggest one is, let me take the biggest one. Be vocal. I'm coming to you, Elizabeth, on the be vocal point. Be enablers. I'm coming to you, Sarah. Be brave. I'm coming to you, Lethem. And did I do be confident? Be in the room. I'm going to say that, Peter, do the be in the room. Okay. Okay, no, but I'm going to push you on that one, Peter, and then I'll just build on. Shall I? Yeah, you start, Elizabeth.
Here can take different forms. Being vocal is about taking accountability and ownership and leading the way with what we need to deliver as enablers for the organization. That for me is about being vocal. But most importantly, for me as a leader within my own space, within the people function, how am I equipping all of my colleagues within my team so that all of us are vocal collectively? Do I walk away, each day I ask myself each week, does everybody within people and culture, and I have 137 colleagues in my team, do they all know the business needs? Do they all know the direction of travel? Do they all know what they need to do to respond collectively to the customers that we have internally and externally. Because if they don't know, they are not going to be credible, they are not going to be vocal. So there is that challenge about leading the way, ensuring that, yes, you're taking accountability and responsibility, but also how do I enable everybody within my directorate to be vocal so that together we are stronger. Without that, you can't do it alone. Thank you.
So I think on your own. I feel like you should have got more than that for that, Elizabeth, to be fair. So enablers, I mean, I'm going to come at this by a slightly different angle. So we've recently started this merger, and we are one of the few integrated care boards in the country that will have a chief people officer. And I think that is part of the enabler. So when we did the staff briefing yesterday, our chief exec was really clear. It makes a huge difference in a people business to have a people professional at the board table, which was nice, no pressure. But what it means is that we have a unitary responsibility. So being an enabler is being part of the decision-making, part of the conversation, part of everything that happens, the shared accountability. And it's not just about someone making a decision and then going, oh, can you just make that happen, Sarah? And I advise, oh no, and someone goes, I don't really want your advice. And the other bit is this bit about it being advice. Sometimes I don't really give my execs a choice that it's advice. It's pretty much, this is what we're doing. Like, this is the right thing to do, because you'll find so many times in your organization, there's workarounds, there's jiggery pokery, there's all sorts of things that goes on. And then you come into something like a change program, you are unpicking that forever, and it's not fair to the individuals. So my enabling is I enable us to do the right thing, and I enable us to enact the decisions that we've taken, but it isn't always advice. And I think we suffer a bit from saying, well, it's just my advice. And sometimes we need to lean into our be brave and be confident and be saying, this is what we need to do, and this is why, and be really clear about that. So we're about to go through another change program. I feel quite well versed in it, but I'm quite confident that as a unitary exec, that will be a better outcome rather than my execs over here designing something and then giving it to me. So I feel that is really important. But I think as we go through this transition, I think we will mourn the loss in other areas of where that investment in people is not seen in all parts of the country, but that's sort of to play out, I think.
And it picks up on what we've just been hearing about there, isn't it, in terms of being brave enough to have a voice. I mean, I don't think your finance colleagues would kind of take nicely if you said, let me just give you a bit of advice on how to close the accounts, or to manage your finances better, or how you should have your financial strategy and planning. Really, would they? They just never did to me anyway when I gave them some advice. So, we're professionals and we've got expertise in this stuff, and we need to be brave and loud and clear. And sometimes it's not advice. This is a direction that we're giving. Sometimes, which might be viewed as a blocker, we're going to say, perhaps not this way to this change, and stop it. Because often we're silent participants in this stuff and allow change to happen which shouldn't happen, which has a huge impact on people and business and your patients. And we've been silent in the room. And that's not always a good thing. So where would I be saying that kind of stuff? Where there's bias in change, where there's fear brought into change, and also where it's kind of really impactful in terms of wasting money. Goes back to my lazy procurement that we can often be participants in. And also having the confidence, the real confidence to pause the pace of change. And that's a big thing to do, because sometimes it can be career limiting. I know that from my own experience. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do, is it? Because we want to be driving, leading, enabling change through purpose. And again, we've heard a few references to this. And it's really important to be able to do that. But of course, you've got to have confidence to be able to do it. What else have I got there for you? For me, anyway, I think that without your voice in the room, there's not going to be conscience. Yeah, and often we bring that organizational conscience into the debate of change. And that requires confidence in your own expertise, knowledge, and experience. You know, you will often have seen this played out many times, so that people listen to your voice. And is your voice and your message worth listening to, even when you might be pushing against the flow of the river, which is not always an easy thing to do. And hence the likes of, you know, CIPD, HPMA organizations with kindred spirits are really important for you, and bringing in support of your professional colleagues on occasions if that's helpful or needed. But those probably would be my key takeaways. And being brave doesn't necessarily always mean it's easy, but neither should we avoid it. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to purpose and value based. And that's an important thing, I think, that we bring to the organization, and conscience.
Brilliant. Thank you. We're going to come back to, Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's this one thing I was going to add. So, by example, over the last few weeks, I've really struggled with this idea that, and we welcome it, the younger generation, some of them prefer to sleep until 10 o'clock, but when they get up at 10 o'clock, they will work and deliver on the outputs. When are we going to start having outputs related contracts as opposed to, I need you here 9 to 5? We need to lead by example, be brave, make those changes, shout about the changes we've made and deliver on that. So there's so much that, you know, I keep going back to this, that I'm learning from our private sector organizations. Some of them have adopted this. It's okay, you can sleep until 12. All I'm looking for is X, Y, and Z delivered within this time frame. And that's really working for our intergenerational workforce. When are we going to pivot to that? The time is now.
Okay. Yeah. So Peter, you just ad-lib because I can't even remember what I gave you anyway. And colleagues, get ready for questions. Colleagues online, get ready with your questions. Colleagues in the room, get ready with your questions.
Yeah, it's just room. As somebody said on the previous panel, we got to have the confidence, we said it here, have the confidence to have sharp elbows and say we need to be in the room for these reasons. But I think there's also something about how we get advocacy for what we do. There is still a lot of misunderstanding about what we do as a profession. I mean, just read some of the nonsense in the media recently. And people just saying, basically all we're doing is all this transactional stuff and we don't always get that right. I would also tell you that I've met many business leaders who wouldn't know strategic HR if they fell over it in the corridor. Now, what is interesting about that is that if you look at, you know, because we're really talking about the strategic role of the profession here, lots of surveys, including ones that we've done, say, what is holding us back from being more strategic? Or sorry, more specifically, the question was, are we being more strategic? So that from the HR professionals, we said, yeah, we think we're being more strategic. But then you went and asked business leaders and they didn't think we were. Now, there are two sides to that argument. The first is my first point, which is that we need to educate a lot of business leaders, a lot more about what strategic HR really looks like. About, for example, the importance of strategic workforce planning, which I have said for years. If you do not understand your future capabilities and needs and organizational competences and cultures, you are sitting on a chair missing a leg. And we've got to be stronger on that stuff. So we've got to educate and help educate leaders as to what we do and what strategic HR looks like. Yes, we've got to build some of our capabilities, as we've also acknowledged. But the other quick point I would make in relation to that, so educate the leaders as to why we need to be in the room, but also make sure that teams like the finance team are our allies, not our enemies. And do not be afraid of finance, because they do not get everything right. But acknowledge that things like, if you're having an argument about headcount, you probably better go with their numbers and agree how to reconcile them, because those are the numbers that the chief executive is most likely to believe. But my point about finance not always getting things right. Do you know that most of corporate or enterprise value today is so-called intangible, which in the accounting world just means that we haven't figured out how to count it properly. Now, if that is the case, then finance has a lot of work to do. And what is one of the biggest sources of intangible value? Well, one of the biggest sources of intangible value are our people, our culture, the knowledge of our people and how they exercise those sorts of things. And we need to work with finance on that stuff, because to go back to my very first point I made, you know, we have to look at people through a risk perspective, a cost perspective, and a value perspective. Finance tends to look at them almost exclusively through a cost perspective, and almost everybody else is looking at them through a risk perspective. So we've got to get onto that value agenda with finance. And the other function that we've got to work with really closely is digital and technology. And we need to embrace their world. They need to embrace our world. As we've all said, we are never going to succeed in digital transformation without understanding the people and the jobs and the culture and the process, all the things that are actually part of our role as change practitioners as well. So I would add those thoughts to help give you the confidence then to be in the room, because people are advocating for us to be in the room and not just wondering why we've got sharp elbows and decided to kick the door down, which we should do anyway.
About you, I feel I've grown a few inches. I'm going to go back, square my, have pointy elbows, bang the door down and say, I'm here. And to your point, actually, I'm not giving you advice, I'm telling. So let's go to the question. Tell them. Okay, questions. Oh, gosh. Okay.
What do you think the biggest people challenges in the NHS at the moment?
Oh, God. 30 seconds.
It's attracting and retaining the right skills, like it is in every organization, frankly. And we would know one of the biggest pressures is a thing. But attracting and retaining the right skills also says we've got to look strategically, because the other thing that has not been present enough in the NHS, and it's true of every highly operational environment that I see, I've done a lot of work with policing, for example, is we're not good enough at thinking strategically. And to get us out of a mode of constantly having to react to crises because we don't have the resources, we have to start to work with the leadership across the whole of the NHS, and certainly within our trusts and integrated care centres and systems, as to how do we get that thinking into the strategy for the NHS going forward. And I'm pleased to see there is now a people strategy. I don't know how visible it is to all of you, but it is at least being discussed. So that would be my 48-second answer. Yeah.
Question.
It's not actually a question though, if there was mathematical in favour the other day. This was from the Times, when he's saying our HR took over British business and got in the way of work.
Yeah.
So much stuff we talked about in terms of what we do, I think going on about the basic prices that we've got in terms of they just think HR just do iron and that kind of stuff. All the stuff about the transactional bits, but no one actually talks about the good things we do.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in the data, you're in the past, where we get that publicity when things go wrong, especially when we've got all this cases within NHS, we get to data, it's HR's fault, you know, it's a CPO's fault, they can do the case, what have you. But when things go well, you know, when you talk about all this big transformation stuff, or you get, I'm the finance director saying we save X, Y, Z money, say what have you. But no one talks about the impact HR having in actually getting those implemented. So my question potentially is there a basic pass within ourselves, and how do we sell ourselves better, you know, out there, so people actually know what we're doing?
Okay, all the panel are going to be on this. How do we sell ourselves better as HR professionals? Peter.
Yeah, just very quickly. I think we've covered a lot of the things that we need to do. We do need to tell our story better, but I wouldn't want any of you to go away and think that there is some crisis with the profession in that regard. I think what you see from, and we know which particular parts of the media tend to love these sorts of stories. I mean, the Telegraph have been running an almost continuous series of, let's have a bit of a poke at HR. And it comes from, interestingly, some of the data we provided about the growth of the profession. But you can't. But the media talks in forked tongues and riddles, because on the one hand, we've been arguing, as we've discussed on the panel, are we having enough influence in business and helping business to move forward successfully? And then on the other hand, media are arguing that HR is now controlling everything. We are now responsible for productivity. We're responsible for how everybody thinks in organizations. We're responsible for controlling business, as you pointed out, and which is clearly massive hyperbole. And as with all these things, there's some truth in the middle here. But I think we all agree we need to tell our story better. It's something we've been working on a lot of the CIB, finding the great evidence cases that show what we do and do well. But I think it's also sad to note that we live in a world where the media thrives on negative stories. Writing about how great you are and didn't you do a wonderful job seems to sell less newspapers, to put it in the old vernacular.
I think
think we should just celebrate our successes. Look at us from the COVID days to now, that well-being element of each and every person in our organization. We hold it, we deliver it, we are driving it forward. Much needed, especially at this time of change. It's one of the key things we should be singing about. We've kept our organizations going. We've kept individuals going. We are there when it's really tough. We are there when they're off sick. We are there to keep them well, to remain well. If nothing else, guys, we are keeping everybody going, and let's celebrate that. Thank you.
So I think it's about leaning into the fact we are a profession. I think we shy away from it. I think we get embarrassed by it. And I didn't start in HR. That's not my background. My background's managing clinical services and running around operationally managing. But I realised that was a people business. So managing in hospitals and mental health trusts is a people business. So I came into it and I wanted to get the CIPD fellow level to be a professional because it was important. And I think that is what we're not doing. I think the work that we've done, I mean, I would big this up, but the career development framework, the professional stuff, all the stuff that Tom's circulated about what the CIPD offer is this year, we've got I'm really keen on this in my team. And I think everybody should be keen on this in their team, because otherwise, why is anyone going to listen to us? Like, we listen to finance because we're all chartered accountants. Well, we're chartered fellows, we're chartered members. We should lean into that. And we just don't. We're a bit shy. Don't be shy, everyone. Be brave, whatever you put up there. Have courage. But, you know, make sure that you are recognised as a people professional and not just paying rations, which I think is the problem.
And I would say if we want to change what people are thinking about us, we've got to put great stories out there. And, you know, we've got a personal responsibility for that. And you've got the amazing, you know, Cheryl with us, who does awesome stuff. In the backdrop of all of this kind of negative press, there's always that kind of shining light coming through from your stories. And we can all do that. Anyone who wants to be on my podcast, you know, put out your story, just give me a shout and I'll sign you up. You've got amazing stuff. Each and every day you do incredible work, making impactful changes to people's lives, and people like to hear those stories and the worthwhile work, the added value work that you do. That's what we've got to be loud and proud about, and be brave and tell people, and then they will start to kind of shift their perception. Yeah, it's relentless though, and each of us have a responsibility in it. So yeah, give me a shout if you want to join my podcast.
Just there. So we are out of time. Lorna has like, get off stage, Bernie, you've overdone it this time. She's given me the sign, but no, let's show our appreciation to our panel. But on the point of that last question, there's so many of us in the room and online. And as Lethan was saying, we can write our own story. I don't know how many of you are on LinkedIn. You know how I roll. I've been taking pictures, not because I don't have anything to do, because I'm going to share a story. That brilliant HR professional, we are proud of our profession. And so we have a personal responsibility to showcase how we add value. And all of us have some kind of platform, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever they call it, LinkedIn. And so share the story of how you are here talking about transformation, how HR is leaning in to supporting the business, enabling the business to drive and transform services. So that is homework that all of us can go. We've got 10 minutes now because I'm told that I've talked for too much, but I think it was a worthy conversation. Be back in 10 minutes. Go and lubricate yourself.